Shavua Tov, the story of the splitting of the sea and the battle of Amalek, are the centerpieces of this week's parsha, with some other important stories in as well. And they all teach us an important lesson, which is how to avoid stress, how to avoid discord, how to avoid unnecessary problems and unhappiness. There is a neighborhood which we should dwell in. It is called Ramot Emunah, Faith Heights. Who lives there? Talmidei Chachamim, scholars live there. Talmidei Chachamim, say the rabbis, Marvim Shalom Ba'olam, increase peace in the world. How do they do that? Well, one simple explanation is that Talmidei Chachamim, scholars, observe the laws of human relations. They don't speak gossip, they don't speak ill of one another, they don't cheat or steal or harm other people or injure them, and so therefore there's going to, of course, be much more peace. But I think it goes deeper than that. And all of these important lessons and how to get to this neighborhood of Ramot Emunah, Faith Heights, not a real place, maybe there is such a place, I don't know, but a spiritual place, a metaphoric place, where we learn how to indeed maintain happiness and peace in our lives under all circumstances. It can be learned from the contrast between the beginning of the Parsha, as we prepared to travel out of Egypt and came upon the sea and would travel through it, to the end of the Parsha when we fought a war against the Amalekites. The beginning of the Parsha is quite puzzling. God says that the people should not go through the route of the Philistines because they may see war, and if they see war, they will become afraid, or they will, for some reason, return to Egypt. Okay, but the Torah says quite clearly that the Israelites were armed. So if they were armed, that means that they were prepared to fight a battle. Why was God afraid that they should run back to Egypt if they'd see war with the land of the Philistines? It's kind of strange. What's even stranger is that a couple of weeks hence, they are going to see war with the Amalekites. Not only are they going to see it, they're going to fight it, and they're going to win it with those weapons that they brought with them out of Egypt. So how come in the beginning of the Parsha it's dangerous for them to see the Philistines? They'll run back to Egypt, but with the Amalekites they don't. One could give a simple explanation that with the Philistines, we would be the ones on offense because we'd be coming into the land in order to conquer it. Whereas with the Amalekites, they attacked us. And well, if it's a defensive war, you don't have a choice in the matter, and so of course you're going to fight. But I think there's a lot more to it than that. There's a very unique and surprising explanation given by a scholar, the Katav Sofer, lived a couple hundred years ago, who says that indeed Israel left Egypt with arms and they were prepared to fight. But what would happen? They'd see the Philistines, and the Philistines were the experts in warfare. They were the know-it-alls. Goliath was a Philistine. And the Israelites would learn from them the tactics and strategies of warfare, and then they'd say, aha, now that we have our weapons and we have our training, let's go back to Egypt, conquer that place, and live there. And obviously that is not the goal that God has. He wants them to enter the promised land. A very unique explanation. But I'd like to suggest that there is this very huge difference that happens between the beginning of the Parsha, when the Israelites left Egypt. Even though they were armed, they were mentally unprepared to fight against the Philistines. They had a slave mentality. They were afraid. And they would have run back to Egypt had they confronted those beasts, those experts of warfare. It would have been too much for them. But in the end of the Parsha, something dramatic had changed. What? So let's fast forward to not fast forward, fast backward, I don't know. Let's go to the shores of the Reed Sea. Yam Suf is the Reed Sea. And there we find a panicked nation of Israel with Egypt in hot pursuit, swords raised, murderous intent, and the Israelites are nervous. Aren't there enough graves in Egypt? You brought us out here to die, they say to Moses. And Moses does what you would expect him to do. He calms them down. He says, folks, you're not going to see these Egyptians anymore. It's going to be over. God will fight for you, and you be silent. Perfect. He's calming them down. That's what he should do. But in the very next verse, God is not pleased with Moses. He says to him, "Mal titzak elai, what are you yelling to me for? What are you yelling to me for?" But Moses didn't yell to God. He was calming the Israelites. What's wrong? God was saying to Moses, what are you putting it all on me? Now there's a difference that has to happen. They have to take part. Daber el bnei Yisrael, says God to Moses, speak to the Israelites and let them go forward. And you, harem et matcha, remove your staff, unte et yadcha, stretch out your hand upon the sea and split it, and the people will pass through on dry land. Now, if you paid attention to those two verses carefully, you'll notice there's a strange sequence there. God is telling Moses, speak to the Israelites, they should travel. Where? They're sitting on the beach already. There's no place to go except into the water. And then in the next verse he says, and get rid of the staff, stretch out your hand and split the sea. So they're traveling before the sea gets split. Wow. The rabbis notice this and they say, yes, indeed, that's what happened. A fellow by the name of Nachshon ben Aminadav of the tribe of Judah needed to go forward. He walked into the sea. Everybody watched him, and the water is coming higher and higher. It's getting up to his nose. If it covers his nostrils, he can't breathe anymore. That's a problem. But the moment the water got there, the entire sea split. In other words, the Israelites needed to learn an important lesson, that until now, the miracles were done by the staff of Moses, which he is now told to put aside, symbolizes the miracles that God initiates, performs, and completes. But from now on, it's not that God will initiate the miracles, but rather we must. And therefore, stretch out your hand, says God to Moses. Use your hand to split the sea, not the staff. What's the significance of the hand? Faith. Fast forward, here's the right phrase, fast forward to the end of the Parsha, when the Amalekites have attacked, and Moses goes up on the hill, one could say the hill of faith, Ramot Heights, the Faith Heights. He's up there on the hill, and he raises his hands, and whenever he raises his hands, there's an ebb and flow in the battle. The Israelites will prevail. But when his hands get heavy and they droop down, then the Israelites start to lose the battle. So Aharon and Hur see this. They find a stone for Moses to lean against or to sit upon, and they hold up his hands so that his hands are constantly up, and then Israel prevails and completes their victory over the Amalekites. The hands of Moses, say the rabbis, don't win or lose a battle. That can't be the meaning, but rather what is the significance of the hands of Moses? Faith. When he raises his hands, they look at his hands and they look towards heaven. They're looking through Faith Heights up to the skies, up to heaven. They have strong faith. They believe, and when they believe, they can perform miracles. And this is the purpose of the people of the nation of Israel throughout history, to believe in God and do the impossible. And so that's what God is telling Moses at the sea. Get rid of the staff. I'm not going to initiate this miracle. You are not going to initiate this miracle. Use your hand. The people need to believe. You tell them that they must walk forward. And only one really was able to take that message in and perform the act of bravery, of marching into the sea, Nachshon ben Aminadav, and the result was the sea split. The Israelites learned something very important. They had left Egypt with arms. They were armed. They were prepared for battle. They had the physical ability. The only thing that was lacking was their faith that they could do it. And therefore, at the beginning of the Parsha, God says, even though they're armed, even though Chamushim Alu Me'eretz Mitzrayim, they came out with weapons, if they see war, they're going to run away. They won't start fighting. They won't push the button to activate the miracles. So that's a lesson they have to learn. And that's why they shouldn't go to the land of the Philistines. Rather, they must go. If they would have gone to the land of the Philistines, there would not have been a splitting of the Reed Sea, because they wouldn't have been there. So now there is a splitting of the Reed Sea. They learn this very important lesson that we have it within us to do the impossible, because God will help us. But he will only help us if we push the button, if we take the first step, if we live in a place called Ramot Emunah, Faith Heights. And that is exactly what we saw at the Battle of Amalek. The beginning of the Parsha has a miraculous salvation, the end also. Even though it seems like it was a natural thing, it was natural, but it was natural, supernatural. We fought the battle. When we had faith, we prevailed. When we didn't have faith, we didn't. That's a miracle too. And that's the way we do miracles throughout history. So I believe that when the rabbis say that Talmidei Chachamim, scholars, Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, increase peace in the world, they are teaching us something very different. You see, Amalek is a nation that doesn't believe in God. They are a nation that believes in the world being random, and what you see is what you get. Whoever is stronger will prevail. Think of Germany in the 1930s and 40s. This was Amalek personified, probably in deeper ways than we even can imagine. So that is what they talk about. This world. Well, you know something? This world can be a scary, frustrating, annoying place. We can find people and situations that cause us great stress. We can have fights. We can have wars. We can have struggles. We can have fears. We can live a life of constant worry, panic, and unhappiness. That's what Amalek gives us, a broken life. The Torah says at the end of the battle of Amalek that the hand of the Lord is on the, Yad al Kes Ka, the hand is on this, as it's like a phrase for an oath. God takes an oath on the Kes Ka, the throne of God. But the word throne is really Kisei. The word that's written in the Torah is Kes, it's only part of the word. And the name of God has 4 letters, but in the Torah here, we only have the first 2 letters, Yud and then a Hey. So it's divided, it's not complete. And that's what the rabbis say, that as long as Amalek is in the world, the throne of God is not complete, the name of God is not complete, because Amalek focuses us on this world, which is a broken place where there is strife, where there is struggle, where there is worry and trouble and divisiveness. Broken is also divided. But if you live in a place called Ramot Emunah, Faith Heights, there the throne of God is complete. There the name of God is complete. There you have shalom. And shalom, the word peace, comes from the same root as shalemut, shalem, complete. Completeness and peace go together. And so therefore the rabbis, the Talmidei Chachamim, the scholars, marbim shalom ba'olam, they increase peace and completeness in the world. Why? Because they show us how to dwell in this neighborhood called Ramot Emunah, Faith Heights, where we believe in God and do the impossible. And so whenever we find the world getting on our nerves, or people getting on our nerves, or things happening that cause us distress, whatever that might be, it's important to realize that if we move up to Ramot Heights, to Faith Heights, then we look at all of these things in the world with an entirely different perspective. Amalek can't stop us. The Philistines can't stop us. Even the sea cannot stop us, because we are dwelling together with God, and we know that we push the button to do good in the world, God will come through for us and strengthen us so that we will achieve that elevated goal. Shavua Tov.